Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how anyone can paint this easy Monstera Leaf in Procreate. This sketch and the color palettes will be available for free in the link below. I'm currently using the rough texture canvas. So to start off, we're going to create a new layer underneath the watercolor texture canvas. And we're going to start with a light green color. And then we'll make our way down to the mid and the dark tones. And I'm going to use the wet on dry brush. You can use any brush you like, but I'll link the exact brushes in the description below so you can follow along, as well as the canvas. And we're going to reduce the opacity to around 60% and fill the general area of the leaf with the light tone color. So start from the top and we're going to make our way around the leaf. And don't worry about the grooves, we will remove them later on. I personally really love houseplants, especially tropical ones, because they're vibrant colors and exotic look. And once you're done painting the outer ends of the edges of the plant, you can just easily fill them up by putting a lot of pressure and going in a circular motion. And don't forget the stem here as well. The light tone is completed. Now we're going to move on with adding the mid-tone colors. So create a new layer. And then we're going to pick a darker tone color. And we're going to increase the opacity to around 80%. Now I'm going to focus on putting the mid-tone colors in the center as well as the center of the leaves. Almost like dragging the colors in towards the center, just like this. This plant may seem complicated at first, but when you break down the steps like this, it's a lot easier, and you can really have fun with it. And we're also going to paint the center of the leaf because it is a bit more darker in the center. Now once that's done, we're going to move on with the dark tones. So create a new layer again, and we're going to pick a dark tone color like this. And we're going to still use the wet on dry brush again. And keep the opacity at our 100%. And just focus on the center, just like this. Now once that is completed, now it's time to start blending. So open up your Layers tab, and we're going to use our fingers to pinch them all together and start blending. And we're going to use the moving blender now. And keep the size to around 30%. And we're going to blend the colors with 2 pigments at a time, just like this. Just wiggling around, going in one direction. Medium pressure, and if it's smudging too much, you can always reduce the size. I really love the blending process because it's so soothing as well as it's relaxing at the same time. And if you are enjoying these tutorials, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel where I will make more tutorials for you guys. And comment down below what else you guys want to see me painting. And the reason why I blend only 2 colors at a time is because I don't like smudging the paint too much with 3 different colors. So I like to focus on 2 pigments at a time and then move on with the next. Now I'm going to start blending the middle part where it's darker and mid-tones, just like this. Now I'm going to start adding the center veins of the plant, which is going to be a little bit more lighter. So we're going to create a new layer now and go back to the light tone color, but we're going to move it a little bit more lighter as well. And use the fine line brush. And keep the size to around 25%. And we're going to fill in the center just like this. Go all the way down and taper off a little bit, as well as the sides as well. The fine line brush tapers off nicely, giving that sharp edge look while giving greater control of the brush. It is useful when you need to add small details like this. The fine line brush can also be used to blend darker pigments to the lighter pigments, and I'll show you how. First, we're going to create a new layer and pick a dark tone color like we used before, and use the fine line brush that we had now. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some darker areas in the center, just like this, to increase the darkness of pigments coming out toward the light. And you can increase the size a little bit more to put less strain on your hand. And that is one of the main benefits of Procreate, or digital art in general. It puts a lot less strain on your hands, and you can simply change the settings to achieve the size that you want. And we're going to add some corner pigments here as well to bring in some of the pigment. This will give a natural, realistic look of the leaf as well. Now we're going to move on with the regular blender and make sure we're using the same layer that we put the pigments on. And increase the size to around 20%, and we're going to drag it out just like this. Just like how watercolor would look when water and pigment darker tones get mixed together. If you have any questions regarding the brushes or techniques, please comment down below or message me, and I'll reply to you as quickly as I can. Now we're going to add a new layer and begin making some watercolor wet on dry effect stain look. And use the wet on dry brush now. And we're going to reduce the opacity to around 60%. And this will give a nice hard edge effect while still maintaining some transparent in the center. And as you can see, I already made some sketches for you guys so you can follow along at the areas of where I want you guys to fill in. And it's going to be a little bit more darker tone than it is. And these are just guidelines. If you want to add more details onto the side, you can. Just play around with it because you could always erase it if you don't like it. Now once we're done with the side, we're going to do the center of the watercolor stain look. So create a new layer, and we're going to use a darker tone color because the center is a bit dark. And just fill in the areas avoiding the center where the veins are. And during this process, you want to try to make it as unpredictable as you can by giving some more grooves in the corners, really enhancing the look of the watercolor uniqueness. I'm going to add another dark tone color because this leaf requires a lot more depth to make it really pop. So pick the wet on dry effect again, an even darker tone color now. And we're just going to fill in the dark centers and a little bit on the corners as well, with the same opacity that we had before. And just like this, just fill in the areas a bit more. And if it's harder to get around the corners, you can reduce the size as well. By creating multiple layers of textures and colors, we're creating a lot more value and depth. And Monstera generally have a lot of unique colors and textures into it. And we're going to fill in some of the areas in the corners as well. I was actually recently gifted this plant, and it's been doing fairly well. But unfortunately, the plant is very young, and it does not have the iconic splits and holes like this one. But I believe in patience is a virtue, and I'm just happy that it's still growing. And don't forget the stem on the top as well. Now we're going to combine everything that we have, except for the sketch, and select the layer that we have, and use the eraser tool using the fine line brush. And now we're going to create the grooves, the cuts, and the splits that shows that iconic look of the Monstera look. Keep the size to around 50%, and we're going to erase the corners just like this. By using the eraser tool at the end to remove and create the splits makes the process a lot easier and carefree really. And don't forget the centers here as well, creating those little holes. And now before we remove the sketch, we want to add the gouache layer with some light reflections. And since the light's coming from the right, we're going to put some light on the right side. So pick a white tone and use the gouache layer and gouache brush. Reduce the opacity to around 60% to make it a little slightly blurry, and we're going to fill in the areas where I made the sketches for you guys. And just like this, fill in the areas on the right side corner. And don't forget the stem as well at the top. Now we can remove the sketch by unchecking the sketch layer, and this is what we have here. And to make it a bit more natural looking, we're going to go to the layer tab that we have the paintings on and use the regular blender. And keep the size to around 20%. And we're going to drag some of the colors in and mix them in a little bit, just like this. Doing last minute touches like this gives that realistic look rather than giving such a perfect edge look all around. Just enough to give that slight mixture, but still maintaining the harder edges in the corners. And here's a quick trick. If you are doing some touch-ups, I recommend working either in clockwise or counterclockwise. This will give a kind of a chronological order, making sure that you have completed the areas when you run around. And now we're going to use the eraser tool, using the fine line brush again, to clean up some of the areas that we have. So just go around the corners here to make it a bit more sharper, because the plant does have sharper edges in the corners when it separates and gives a nice split. As you can see, the left side, it's looking a lot more sharper than the right. Now we're going to add some shadows to this leaf. You don't have to add the shadows because the leaf can be on its own, but I wanted to show you how it would look with the shadow if it's laying on the ground. And since the light is coming from the right side, we're going to put more shadows on the left. So create a new layer, but it's going to be the most bottom layer of all the paintings. And keep the tone to around bluish tone here in the dark. The opacity to around 30% and the size to around 40 to 50%. And just like this, we're going to fill in the left side. Just like this. Provide a bit more pressure when you're inside the grooves, when you're in the corners, because it will be a little bit more darker in there. And don't forget the holes, they will be dark as well because the shadow is being covered. and you're finished with the shadow process. And there you have it, beautiful, easy Monstera Leaf in Procreate. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I have a lot more tutorials on my page, and you can continue painting with me by clicking the next video. And as always, have a wonderful day.